It's time to laugh, to win, and to live the thrill of the action.
Hey, baby, let's go out there like a bunch of crazy dogs. What the hell's going on out here?
No idea what's going on, but I am excited.
Every pick, every play, every game-changing moment.
Unbelievable!
This is You Better You Bet, brought to you by BetMGM on Westwood One Sports.
And it is a great day to be alive on Westwood One Sports. Welcome in, everybody. Chris Mack in for Nick Kostos today on You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM here on Westwood One Sports. Wherever you may be across North America, we got you covered. SiriusXM channel 375 and on the Westwood One Sports app. We are with you for the next 3 hours, getting you ready for a million different things, including college basketball. Our friend Brad Evans of BetMGM tonight will join us in an hour. The NFL offseason, it's officially on for all 32 teams. We'll get into that. And we'll figure out what this clicking noise is that apparently everyone's hearing in their ears, including me, that is making this very hard to listen to. Do we have that? Do we have any idea what that may be? It sounds like a machine gun going off in my ears, Bill. Am I the only one hearing that? Okay, if I'm the only one hearing it, then I'm okay with plowing forward with the 5 biggest stories of the day. Let's get to the high 5.
Five.
He should never grab a microphone and really talk Steeler business.
Yeah.
Because if we talking Steeler business, his ass is foul of all foul. Like that he's did is foul of all foul. He's not a good teammate. Won a Super Bowl with him, but the person, he's just not a good teammate.
Joey Porter, who won a Super Bowl with the Pittsburgh Steelers with Ben Roethlisberger as his quarterback, talking about said Ben Roethlisberger. I swear, it's only a coincidence that we seemingly get a Steelers-related story every time I fill in for Nick. Now, it's not earth-shattering news to Steelers fans or those in Pittsburgh that a great number of Ben Roethlisberger's old teammates didn't like him, especially in his younger drink-like-a-champion days, when he was rude to just about everybody. Veteran teammates, other staffers in the building, bartenders and servers on the south side of Pittsburgh. Nobody was immune to Big Ben acting like a big baby. Not the least of which was flying over the hood of a Chrysler New Yorker on 2nd Avenue after riding to the facility on his motorcycle without a helmet on, and then, not too long after, being spotted on another motorcycle by a local cameraman and flipping him the bird. Those images went to die somewhere on a cutting room floor as the local channel that gathered them had management that didn't want to jeopardize their relationship with the team by exposing what a jackwagon Ben really was. Ben Roethlisberger's chickens coming home to roost a good 10 to 20 years later after those eggs hatched, though, is really the last vestige of the pre-social media era in sports. Pictures were taken on those little disposable cardboard cameras, developed days or weeks later, not snapped and posted for the world to see in an instant. So as much as Roethlisberger may be saved, and as much as he may want to dip his toe into the media world now with a fun little podcast in his not so little basement, this is what happens when you treat people like crap. It gets remembered. And it gets called out, sometimes decades later. There's no statute of limitations on being a jerk. And Joey Porter and a fair number of Big Ben's teammates who aren't exactly racing to his defense just reminded us of that. Next.
4.
The ball's going to end up in Flagg's hands.
Let him shoot a 3.
Yep.
Go for it.
Oh, my goodness! Oh, he hit it! Oh, my goodness!
Cooper Flagg ripping up the stat sheet.
Cooper Cooper Flagg. Oh, my mic is still making this noise. Cooper Flagg has had a hell of a rookie year. All right, I'm going to make an executive decision here, friends. Rather than rolling through the high five with a machine gun sound going off in my microphone, let's do this. Let's take a quick pause. We're going to take a moment. We're going to reset everything so you can actually hear what we're saying and talking about today here on You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM here on Westwood One Sports.
This is You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM on Westwood One Sports.
You know, I read this massive article yesterday about how AI is going to take everyone's jobs at some point. Welcome back into You Better You Bet here on Westwood One Sports, presented by BetMGM. Chris Mack in for Nick Kostos today. There is one thing AI will never be able to replace, and I think it's the key to somehow keeping the robots from taking over and the artificial intelligence conquering the world one day. And it's the simple unplug it and plug it back in remedy that we just found for my microphone during the first segment here on You Better You Bet. Again, Nick is off today, but we are still streaming live on YouTube, youtube.com/@thekostos. And we got the audio issues worked out. So we are ready to roll for the next 3 hours, 45 plus 2 hours, 45 plus minutes here on You Better You Bet. Talking plenty of NFL offseason. Yes, Olympic hockey is officially underway. Can the U.S. win gold for the first time in what would be 18 Olympiads or something like that? Plenty of college hoops. NBA is coming up on the All-Star break as well. Will anybody actually care about that All-Star game? Plenty to get into with the 5 biggest stories of the day.
5.
He should never grab a microphone and really talk Steeler business. Yeah. Because if we talking Steeler business, his ass is foul of all foul. Like that he's did is foul of all foul. He's not a good teammate. Won the Super Bowl with him, but the person, he's just not a good teammate.
Joey Porter, former Pittsburgh Steelers player and at one point assistant coach, father of current Steelers corner Joey Porter Jr., blasting his former teammate, Ben Roethlisberger, who, oh, by the way, next year is eligible to go on the list of Hall of Fame candidates. I swear, it's only a coincidence that every day I guest host for Nick, there happens to be a Steelers story that comes out. But here we are, another Steelers story. It's not earth-shattering to Steelers fans or those around Pittsburgh that a great number of Ben Roethlisberger's old teammates didn't like him, especially in his younger drink-like-a-champion days, right? If you're a Steelers fan, if you're not, you don't even have to be a Steelers fan. You've seen the pictures. When he was rude to just about everybody back in the day as a young guy. He was rude to veteran teammates. He was rude to staffers in the facility, rude to bartenders and servers all over Pittsburgh. Nobody was immune to Big Ben acting like a big baby back in the day. Not the least of which was when he flew over the hood of a Chrysler New Yorker on 2nd Avenue in Pittsburgh after riding to the Steelers facility on a motorcycle without a helmet on. And then not too long after, being spotted on another motorcycle by a local television station and flipping them the bird. That was young Ben Roethlisberger. Those images, by the way, went to die somewhere on a cutting room floor as that local channel that had gathered them had management that didn't really want to jeopardize their relationship with the Steelers by exposing what a jackwagon Ben was continuing to be. The point is this. Ben Roethlisberger's chickens coming home to roost a good 10 to 20 years after those eggs had hatched. It's really the last vestige of the pre-social media era in sports. Pictures were taken on those little cardboard disposable cameras that they'd put on tables at a wedding as a favor, and they were developed days or weeks later, not snapped and posted for the world to see in an instant. So as much as Roethlisberger may be saved now, and as much as Ben may want to dip his toe into the media world with a fun little podcast in his not-so-little basement, this is what happens when you treat people like crap at some point. It gets remembered. And it gets called out. Sometimes years, if not decades later. There's no statute of limitations on being a jerk. And Joey Porter and a fair number of Roethlisberger's teammates, who aren't exactly racing to his defense, they just reminded us of that. Next.
4.
The ball's going to end up in Flagg's hands.
Let him shoot a 3. Yep. Go for it.
You can't dispute that Cooper Flagg is having a great rookie year. By his own personal standards, especially, if not team standards. What is it, an 8-game losing streak for the Mavs now? But even rookies don't want to take part in All-Star Weekend. Forget about it, he says. He's got a foot injury we're going to keep an eye on. Wink, wink. Nudge, nudge. He's got a foot injury we're going to keep an eye on during the break. And even if Flagg is actually dinged up, this is a rookie making a veteran maneuver. Accentuating that injury maybe just in time to avoid the whole damn All-Star break. That's a veteran move. Look, nobody wants to be a part of the NBA All-Star Weekend. We bring up guys from the G League for the dunk contest. We come up with new formats. U.S. versus the world. You can't blame Cooper Flagg or anybody else that doesn't want to be a part of NBA's All-Star Weekend. Regardless of the severity or seriousness of any injury, mythical or real. You can't blame them for backing away. These games mean nothing. And when the payouts for winning are less than 1%, more like 0.1% of most players' salaries, it's like you or I deciding to skip our family's summer vacation at the beach in exchange for like a $50 gift card. Tank of gas. Great. It just doesn't make sense. So, it is an age-old argument that we have every time an All-Star game comes around. Talk about how do we fix it? In particular, the NBA All-Star Weekend. How do we fix it? Someone has come up with an insane idea that will never actually be put into practice. But I think it's worth letting you hear about it anyway. And we'll do exactly that in about 25 or 30 minutes. Next.
3.
Your attitude's wrong. Your tone of voice is wrong. This is your opportunity
for
here.
You. Playing football at West Canaan may have been the opportunity of your lifetime. But I don't want your life.
I don't want your life. Man, if you were a teenager at the time Varsity Blues came out and you didn't get along with your parents or any kind of authority figures, that line from James Vanderbeek, Jonathan Moxon, was right up there with everything else in the late 90s that you used as a battle cry. You know, the DX suck it, the NWO for life. Did I watch too much wrestling as a kid? Maybe. I did it all for the nookie. That whole generation of throwing up middle fingers to authority, right? Varsity Blues wasn't really at the heart of it. It wasn't, it wasn't Fast Times at Ridgemont High or, I guess, The Breakfast Club. This wasn't walking off into the sunset, raising your fist to the sky. But Varsity Blues is a part of your youth. It's actually a really good movie for what it is. Sports movies don't get enough credit because people look at them as fluff and fun, and there's not a lot of them that people look at, especially critics, as, oh, this is really good. But Varsity Blues was pretty good. Again, maybe I'm tainted in a way by growing up in that generation, but for those of us that grew up in that generation, who remember James Vanderbeek as Dawson, right? Dawson's Creek, which was a massive show in the late 90s, early 2000s. I mean, that Rolling Stone cover with Katie Holmes on it, and the jean shorts and the tank top sitting on the tire swing, that was up there on the bulletin board in my dorm room whole freshman year at Penn State. But if you grew up around then, you were a teenager around then, James Vanderbeek was just a part of pop culture at that time, right? And we lost him way too early. I'm not going to go off on a massive PSA about guys over the age of 40 and making sure you get your colorectal screenings. You hear that in plenty of places. I'll remind you, it actually is important. But it's a shame someone so young is lost after that battle. But the role of Jonathan Moxon by James Vanderbeek is about as peak late 90s as you can get. Varsity Blues, that movie. The whipped cream bikini. Puke and Rally. So many lines from that movie. Sports movies connect with us on that level. And the passing, the way too early and untimely passing of James Vanderbeek yesterday got me to thinking about one consistent character that we have in every sports movie that I think is worth debating. Not to make light of the passing of someone at such a young and tragic age. But it leads us to a conversation, which we'll get into in about an hour and 20 minutes from now here on You Better You Bet. Chris Mack in for Nick Kostos on Westwood One Sports, live across North America on Sirius XM Channel 375. Next.
2.
Can their forwards get it done? We know Brady Tkachuk and Matthew Tkachuk. We know how they're going to show up. We know how they're going to show up. We know Jack Eichel's going to show up the way he is. He's won a Stanley Cup. For me, the question is Austin Matthews. He had a couple chances in overtime late in the game to put this thing to bed. He didn't put it to bed in Four Nations. He's going to have those opportunities. He's the captain. It's going to take a defensive effort by their forward group to get it done.
PK Subban on ESPN a few weeks ago talking about the Americans' shot at gold in the Olympics. Look, the U.S. and Canada are clearly the two best teams in this tournament. If you saw Finland lose yesterday, if you saw Sweden rack up a gajillion shots against Italy and still not put the game away until late in the third period, those are supposed to be 3 and 4. Yeah, there's other teams out there like the Swiss and the Germans who might make things a little testy and a little interesting, but it's the U.S. and Canada. And they will not meet, if they do meet, until the gold medal game. Austin Matthews, who PK was talking about there, was named captain for the American squad. He may be the most talented guy on the American squad. But Austin Matthews has yet to prove he can lead a team, whether it's an American team or a Maple Leafs team, to anything more than disappointment. And I don't want to put it all on Austin Matthews, because it's not all on Austin Matthews. But I don't know if the Americans have done enough, head coach Mike Sullivan included, in order to change their fortunes against the Canadians if they meet them in these Olympics. The Canadians, they've added grit, guys like Sam Bennett, Tom Wilson. And Bennett may never see the ice in a game in Milan. He's a late injury replacement for Anthony Cirelli. But Tom Wilson is skating on the top line alongside Connor McDavid. And it's for the express purpose of deterring the Tkachuk boys from doing what they did at the Four Nations face-off and stirring it up, intimidating Canada somewhat physically and between the whistles. Despite winning the Four Nations, Canada decided they wanted to put a big old pot stirrer on that top line to keep Team USA honest, to keep them preoccupied maybe when McDavid hits the ice. Team USA, on the other hand, they leaned all in on the Mike Sullivan strategy of let's bludgeon them and bore them to death. They're not going to play overly physical, although the Tkachuks will show you a lot of that. But they will play boring hockey. They leave Cole Caulfield and Jason Robertson tied for third in the league with 32 goals right now at home. That's not adjusting to finishing second in the Four Nations. And on top of it, this isn't the Four Nations face-off. This is the Olympics. So the bludgeoning method is out. They say they're going to try to officiate this thing as close to the NHL rules as they ever have in these Olympics. But it's still the Olympics. And as many Rangers and Penguins fans of the last decade would attest to, the aforementioned head coach Mike Sullivan, while being great at boring, is not so great at generating offense when there's none to be found. And without the same level of physicality in the Olympics that existed in the Four Nations, it may be just as hard for the boys to set the tone and gin up the energy necessary to skate with the Canadians if they have to match them goal for goal, which feels like it's going to be necessary against a team with as much talent as Canada. Sidney Crosby's their third-line center. We'll get into this a little bit more in about an hour here on You Better You Bet. Finally,
1.
I think Mendoza's going to have real issues against. My biggest question and concern with him in the NFL is just like, what does it look like when he's under pressure? Is he going to be a guy that's able to escape, make off-platform throws, be able to not take sacks? He has some really ugly decisions in terms of how he moves in the pocket when he's under pressure. It's not always that poised. He's just not that type of athlete where he can get away with that stuff in the NFL.
That's John Ledyard, who really knows scouting, who really knows players, watches the draft very intently, covers multiple teams in the entire NFL. John was on right here on Westwood One Sports yesterday with Nick Ashew, who was filling in for Drake Toll yesterday morning. And I was in the car listening to this, and I heard John say what he said about Fernando Mendoza. Presumptive first overall NFL draft pick, Fernando Mendoza, right? So many people have it written in ink already. Maybe people in the Raiders facility. They got it written down. They're ready to turn the card in right now. They don't need to wait till April 23rd. And at another point in that conversation yesterday, John Ledyard essentially said Mendoza's ceiling is like a poor man's Joe Burrow. That's his ceiling. His absolute ceiling. Now, maybe to a quarterback-starved team like the Las Vegas Raiders, that sounds like a great idea with the first overall pick. And if we were talking about a team that had already built out most of their roster, maybe a bright young quarterback like Mendoza working under a Clint Kubiak and with the tutelage of Tom Brady working in his favor, a Temu version of Joe Burrow would make sense. Come on, let's be real. Vegas's roster is a disaster outside of Brock Bowers, maybe Ashton Genty, and a guy who doesn't want to be there anymore, Max Crosby, who you'll hear more from later. Even at the age of 28 and coming off an injury, Crosby's still in his prime and worth several high-end draft picks in a trade. And it goes without saying that the first overall pick in the NFL draft is worth some pretty pricey capital as well. So why isn't GM John Spytek listening to any and every deal that may be on the table for both of those items, Crosby and the first overall pick? There's no benefit to taking Mendoza, a quarterback who wouldn't be first overall in many other classes, and putting him behind a porous offensive line and asking him to learn on the job with only Genty and Bowers around him. In fact, it's the kind of disservice that will derail Mendoza's career before it even starts. The strategy for the Raiders should be to build out everything but the quarterback position, with picks acquired and accumulated by trading Crosby and the first overall pick and waiting to get their QB. You know, the quarterback crisis in the NFL is just as much a product of a lack of talent as it is teams' desires to latch onto a quarterback as early as possible, regardless of what infrastructure may be around him or not, throw him against the wall, and see if he sticks or not. A lot of times, young QBs don't stick, not just because they may not be talented enough, but because they're not given as good a situation as possible. These quarterbacks go high in the draft, they join underdeveloped rosters, and in many instances, head coaches who either have way too much to lose, are on the hot seat, or are new and lack experience. It's a recipe for disaster. It is. And the Raiders are seemingly headed down the exact same path as so many other teams before them. Maybe Mark Davis, in between his trips to Supercuts, really has ceded control to people intelligent enough to slow play this thing, and the talk of Mendoza being all but cemented in as their pick is just a leverage play. Maybe the morning of April 23rd, we'll get news that Vegas has dealt the first overall pick for a boatload of picks, and we'll go about this the right way. But again, let's be real. It's the Raiders, a team that lives by Davis's father's mantra of just win, baby, while not really having any idea how to actually position themselves to do so. So what do you think? 310-840-4910. here on You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM. Chris Mack in for Nick Kostos here on Westwood One Sports. Is that a bridge too far? Should the Raiders really look to deal both Crosby and essentially Mendoza before he's even theirs? Deal that first overall pick? Or is there a way to accelerate their rebuild while also getting the quarterback in Mendoza? 310-840-4910 or jump into the chat on YouTube as well. YouTube.com/@TheKostos. I think when you find yourself in a situation that the Raiders find themselves in, like I said, it's a disservice to the quarterback to bring them in to a situation where they're just going to get the hell beat out of them. They are. And when the best player on your roster, granted he's not on the offensive side of the ball, but when the best player on your roster wants out, as Max Crosby so clearly does, you have to consider resetting nearly the whole damn thing. Like I said, aside from Bowers and Genty, for what it's worth, all these rumors, all this stuff swirling around Max Crosby. He was on Let's Go with Jim Gray last night and tossed a beautiful word salad about all these rumors.
If you have drama, if you have a losing season, they just try to throw gasoline on the fire. I know what I'm about. I really don't care what everybody has to say. I used to a lot as a young guy. I really don't give a damn. People could have their own opinions. I know what's going on. I know my truth. I don't need to sit here and keep rehashing it to people that don't know what's going on.
Here's the problem, Max. You've apparently doused that fire with your own gasoline. And it's totally fine if Max Crosby wants out of Vegas because he doesn't like the way Alex Guerrero handled sitting him down at the end of last year, because he doesn't feel like things are going in the right direction, because he wants to immediately play for a contender instead of spending more time languishing on a team that is showing no signs of climbing up out of the basement. So I don't blame Max Crosby, but first and foremost, Max, just own it. Own it. Go out there and tell everybody the truth. I don't like the way they sat me down at the end of last year and the reason they gave me for sitting down. Had they just been clear about it being injury related, maybe I would stomach it a little bit better. But I knew and they knew that it was about ensuring we lost as many games as possible so we could get the first overall pick. Just own it. That's first and foremost here. But if you're going to deal Max Crosby, who's still, I think, at the peak of his powers, especially when healthy, and he'll be healthy by the time next season starts. And there are teams out there looking for pass rushers. Maybe he doesn't end up in New England playing for Vrabel as he wants to. But regardless of where you trade Max Crosby, you still get a ton in return if you're the Raiders. Now take those assets, right, and start to build your roster out. Is it a bridge too far then to say that while you're building the roster out this year and next, you don't put a young quarterback in the middle of that mess? You wait to find your QB? I think, like I said, it's a disservice to Fernando Mendoza, but more importantly, the proper way to build a roster. Bill, you and I talked about this a little bit this morning before the show, and I think if you're going to rebuild, and trading Crosby is more than tanking at the end of the year, is a white flag on we're going to take some time to figure this out. If you're going to do that, to me, it makes all the sense in the world to get the best possible offer you can for that first overall pick, stock up on talent over the next couple of years, and then go find your quarterback, especially in a year bereft of quarterback talent.
So I agree mostly with you, and I'm with you 100% they should trade Max Crosby. I mean, this is a guy who's turning 29 in August. Even if the Raiders rebuild goes brilliantly, it's going to take at least 2 years. And now he's sitting there at 31. And look, Crosby may be a guy who's awesome till he's 35, like a Calais Campbell. He's also a guy that might fall off a cliff at 31. Like even Trey Hendrickson wasn't quite as dominant last year before the injuries at 31. So that 30-year threshold is risky. This is the perfect time to trade Max Crosby, and he doesn't want to be there anyway. So I'm with you. Get all the assets in the world. And if the Raiders are wishy-washy on Mendoza, they should not take him number one. I agree with that. But if Spytek and Brady and Clint Kubiak are like, this is the guy, this is going to be a top 5 quarterback in the league one day, then I don't think you can pass on that opportunity. But I also think if they believe that and they trade Crosby, I think they have a chance to make something very functional for Mendoza and not throw him to the wolves like so many bad organizations have done for young quarterbacks, especially the New York Jets, in the past. Because I think when you have Genty, and we all know a running game is a rookie quarterback's best friend, and you have a safety valve like Bowers, I think Trey Tucker's okay. I think he's a pretty solid wide receiver too. Now, they don't have a wide receiver one, but they do have Brock Bowers. I think that's enough there. Their problem is their offensive line is a turnstile. Now, I think Jackson Powers-Johnson can be pretty good. I don't think there's much else on that line worth anything. I think they need to do a Chicago Bears type thing. If they trade Crosby, you've got a first-round pick sitting there. Use that on a tackle. Maybe if it's a later pick, maybe even an interior lineman, a guard. I think if they truly invest in the offensive line, get a couple free agents, get some rookies in there, they can make that offensive line pretty good. So suddenly you've got Mendoza behind a solid offensive line where Genty doesn't get hit behind the line of scrimmage all the time, and he's got Bowers and he's got Trey Tucker out there. I think that's functional if Clint Kubiak does have the offense that's going to work for Mendoza. You got nothing on defense, and that's fine. Lose every game, 35-24. It doesn't matter. That's fine. What you're worried about is just developing Mendoza this year, and you can't put him, I agree with you 100%. You put him behind that offensive line, it's over for him. He's just going to get destroyed. So that's what I would do. I'm a firm guy that if a GM and a coach love a quarterback, or like, this is the guy, there is no trade worth trading for that guy. But if and I think Mendoza's going to be good. I don't know if he's going to be great, but I don't have the number one pick either. So my opinion doesn't matter.
Yeah. I think that's the part of this too that is a big sticking point for me here is in any other year, I don't know if Fernando Mendoza's the first overall pick. And if I look at this from a 50,000-foot view, that we're not just going to silo this into 2026 and the 2026 draft class, I have to look at it as this is the best possible solution at quarterback for us. Maybe right now, okay, maybe that's the best possible quarterback available, but is it the best possible solution for the quarterback position going forward? And I think, like I said, so many teams get caught up in, well, you got to find your quarterback, and they don't think about building out everything around that quarterback, which if you do it right, you can do it that way. And yeah, maybe you're not drafting first overall anymore. Maybe you don't get the best quarterback in the draft in 2 or 3 years, but you still get a good one. And you build out the roster in totality so that you're not talking about, hey, can this be functional? Sure. You're talking about, hey, can we actually compete? Can we actually contend? And I think that's what the Raiders should do. I'm curious what people think. 310-840-4910. Mark on the YouTube chat, which you can join as well, youtube.com/@thekostos, says the situation on offense in Vegas is way overblown. Trade Crosby, take the $91 million in cap space, use Genty and Bowers as pillars, and then use that draft, like Bill said, to rebuild the O-line, sign a few in free agency, and you'll have a totally competent offense. Maybe. But Raiders fans, do you want functional and competent? Or do you actually want to chase what the founder laid out for you half a century ago and just win, baby? I don't know. I think it's a valuable question of what your goal actually is if you're the Raiders and a Raiders fan. Coming up here on You Better You Bet, somebody has an absolutely insane idea for fixing the NBA All-Star Game that will never happen, but may actually make some sense. That's next here on You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports.
Welcome back to You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports.
This is just downright unhinged. You have to hear the idea someone came up with for fixing the NBA All-Star Game in just a second here on You Better You Bet. Presented by BetMGM. Make it legendary. Chris Mack in for Nick Kostos today and tomorrow here on Westwood One Sports. Always inside your Westwood One Sports app as well. Download it, and you'll have everything right there in the palm of your hand and live across North America on SiriusXM Channel 375 as well. We're down to about 3 weeks left in the college basketball regular season. So we'll talk to Brad Evans of BetMGM tonight about everything happening there. A lot of folks this time of year, this is where you jump back on the college basketball bandwagon, right? Football's done and over with. You pivot to the NBA and college basketball. There's the added mix of the Olympics going on as well. So we'll dive into college hoops with Brad at the top of the hour. Does not matter what you're betting, though, whether you're watching the action on the field, the court, or the ice. You want to remember the most exciting moments long after the final whistle. Betting with boosted odds can get you started on that journey. Activate your odds boost token on any sports bet, and you'll receive a bigger payout if you win. Grab that token and elevate your excitement with BetMGM. Download the BetMGM app today. Please gamble responsibly. Make it legendary with BetMGM. Nick Wright, who I don't know personally. I've never met Nick, but we have a lot of mutual contacts. I know people that do know Nick well. By all accounts, he's a wonderful human being. I've been told as much by people whose judgment of character I trust. But he does come up with some crazy stuff from time to time, our friend Nick Wright. And this may be right up there near the top of the list. Nick Wright was on with Bill Simmons on The Ringer. I don't know if it was their specific NBA show or just Bill Simmons' general podcast. Does not matter. He was on with Bill Simmons, and they were talking about the idea of, okay, great, we've got USA versus the world in the NBA All-Star Game this year. Again, they're kind of like mini games, 2 U.S. teams, 1 world team. Is this going to fix the All-Star weekend? I told you earlier, I don't think so. When the financial reward for showing up and winning the All-Star game, or winning any of the contests, really, is financially the equivalent of what for you or I would be like a $50 gift card. I mean, that's like your boss walking into your office and being like, everybody, we had a great third quarter. Sales were through the roof. Might be our best year of all time. Here's $25. Head on down to Burger King and grab yourself some onion rings. It's just that's what I'm killing myself for. If I could go lay on a beach for a few days. No, I'll go do that instead. So I don't blame guys at all for not taking the All-Star game seriously and looking for ways out of it. I have no problem with that. So that's a big part of the problem with any All-Star festivity in any sport. How do you make it worth these guys' time? And you've got to add something to the mix, like the U.S. versus the world idea that they're going to try this year. I floated the idea of maybe in the future, I said this a couple weeks ago when I was filling in for Nick, maybe they could make the Pro Bowl games, take guys and align them with their colleges and their college conferences, right? Have like an SEC team against a Big Ten team. Guys are always really closely attached, or at least they used to be before the portal blew things wide open, really attached to their alma mater. Maybe that would add a little. You got to add some sort of incentive. Well, Nick Wright took this to the nth degree and the most extreme level you could find in talking to Bill Simmons about how to fix the NBA All-Star game.
PC headlines be damned.
I know where you're going.
White guys versus black guys. Luka, Joker, Flag, Reeves, Knipple against Wimby, whomever. And I'm telling you right now, guys would play hard.
Nick Wright with Bill Simmons on The Ringer talking about how to fix the NBA All-Star game. I mean, it'll never happen. There is less than zero chance that Adam Silver would ever take this suggestion and run with it. And let's be honest, in today's current political climate, it would be a bad idea. It would. I think even in a perfect utopian society, that idea would bring out the worst in some people. But Nick's got a point, doesn't he? It'd be a hell of a game, I think. Now, this isn't to suggest, I don't think the white guys would win, okay? I think the white guys would, if you put, like everybody goes, well, I mean, come on. We got Luka and Joker on the same team. Okay, that's great. Austin Reeves out there firing threes. A healthy Cooper Flag if he were healthy and showing up to All-Star Weekend. Let's throw him into the mix too. It would be interesting. If you got all the white dudes together and put them on just one roster, I think it would be a good playoff team. They're not beating an all-star team. I'm sorry. They're not. But it's a hell of an idea. And I give Nick a ton of credit for actually throwing it out there. There's no way. This is where we need to take a step back and make an honest assessment of all-star games at any sport and just understand that until there's a way to make it financially worth their while, which may be an impossibility, guys aren't going to play hard. Guys aren't going to take it too seriously. Oh, I'm lining up against you. You've got the same agent as me. We're buddies in the offseason. We work out together. It's just not going to work, all-star games. So take it for what it's worth. Some mild entertainment on a random weekend in the middle of February when you're looking for something. Although I'm curious to see if it's going to beat the Olympics in the ratings. That might be it. Anyway, coming up, like I said, we've entered the final few weeks of the regular season in college basketball. Time to get back on that college hoops bandwagon. We'll do it with Brad Evans of BetMGM tonight, next here on You Better You Bet.
He fails to recall that Mark Andrews was wide open, had the football in his hands, and dropped the 2-point conversion that would have given That wouldn't have even, that would have won the game for the Baltimore Ravens. They lost 41. No, that would have tied the game, I believe. Yes, it wouldn't have even won the game. It would have tied the game if Mark Andrews caught that 2-point conversion against Buffalo. So it wouldn't have even been a guarantee that they would have won. It would have tied the game. With the play from 4th and 4 that the Rams lost on was a tremendous play by Devin Witherspoon guarding Ferguson, the Rams tight end. He was not wide open. He didn't even get his hands on the ball. He was basically playing defense to make sure that it wasn't intercepted. He basically had no chance to catch that football. It wasn't even close. The Rams lost that game because the Seahawks outplayed them, because the Rams defense couldn't stop them. It didn't come down to just that one play. The Rams had other opportunities. It came down to Xavier Smith dropping a punt that resulted in a Seahawks touchdown a play later. It resulted in the Rams not getting it on the other 4th down that they went for. Nothing with Ferguson dropping that football. And it wasn't even like a bad throw from Stafford. It was a hell of a play. Seattle had it perfectly covered. That's what it came down to. There was limited opportunities. And that's why, if you want to make one argument why the Rams lost the game, and I didn't really blame Sean McVay in the moment, but the Rams lose by 4. They were down 31-20. They score a touchdown. You probably should have went for 2. Because if you get the 2-point conversion, that would have made 31-28, and then they wouldn't have had to go for it on 4th down there with the final 4 minutes. They would have kicked the field goal to tie the game, and then we would have saw what would have happened. But I don't know what Paul's talking about. That 6'6" monster. If he caught the ball, he dropped the ball. It wasn't a drop. It wasn't even close to a drop. It was a hell of a play by Seattle. And I don't know, man. I'm lost. Paul scrambled me up. I don't know what he's talking about. Everybody wanted to see Matthew Stafford win the MVP. I think there was as many people that wanted to see Drake May win the MVP. And Stafford would have been in the Super Bowl if the Rams defense got some stops. They gave up 450 yards of offense and 31 points. Anyway, we'll take a short break. Cram it up your cram hole, LaFleur.
It's time to laugh, to win, and to live the thrill of the action.
Hey, baby, let's go out there like a bunch of crazy dogs. What the hell's going on out here?
No idea what's going on, but I am excited.
Every pick, every play, every game-changing moment.
Unbelievable!
This is You Better You Bet, brought to you by BetMGM on Westwood One Sports.
And welcome aboard Hour 2 of You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM. Make it legendary right here on Westwood One Sports. Chris Mack in for Nick Kostos today and tomorrow. And we've established we cannot fix the NBA All-Star Game, so maybe we talk hoops that actually matter. This segment sponsored by Progressive Commercial Insurance, protecting your business vehicles 24/7. They are the way to go. See if you can save at progressivecommercial.com. We'll get back into NFL offseason maneuverings in about 20 minutes or so. In particular, the Seahawks celebration in Seattle. And, of course, we're inching closer to the start of the big names jumping on the ice as far as Olympic hockey goes. You got Canada dropping the puck at around 10:40 Eastern. The Americans play right around 3:10 Eastern. Probably those two meeting for a gold medal game. We'll see. But we'll get into all that throughout the course of the rest of the show. Thanks for joining us. You can always jump into the conversation in the YouTube chat, youtube.com/@thekostos, or on the phone, 310-840-4910. If we're going to talk college hoops, how can we talk about college hoops? And everybody jumping back on the bandwagon now that the NFL season is officially in the rearview mirror. How can we do any of that without our friend Brad Evans of BetMGM tonight and thegamingjuice.com? Brad, How you doing, my friend?
Hola, amigo! I am splendid. I am spectacular because college hoops is a rocking product right now, unlike the NBA.
Yes. The NBA will go through the motions this weekend, and college hoops is just now stepping on the gas with about 3 weeks left in the regular season. So let's do it this way. I think this is a good way to look at it because so many people are now, like I said, jumping back on the bandwagon. They've done nothing but pay attention to football for the last 6 months, and they wake up today. Maybe last night. I was flipping through channels last night. I didn't want to watch ice dancing. No offense to ice dancers out there. I didn't want to watch ice dancing. I didn't want to watch two-man luge, which is got some interesting undertones to it. I didn't want to watch the Olympics. There was nothing going on that I wanted to watch Olympic-wise. So I had a feast of college basketball in front of me. Not all of the teams that were playing were great, but there was a UConn Butler game that until the last 6 minutes or so was a little sticky for the Huskies. So let's just look at it from a 50,000-foot view to start, Brad, as people are jumping back in. What have they missed over the last 2 or 3 months as they've been paying attention to football nonstop in the college basketball world?
Yeah, you're missing arguably one of the greatest seasons ever to occur on the college hardwood. And one of the primary reasons why is this is a ballyhoo. This is a storied. This is a legendary freshman class. Everybody's been talking about Darren Peterson. Will the cramps crop up? Has he got another bout of the flu? Is he actually going to play 30 minutes or even 20 minutes or a single minute in a game? But, he's projected to be the number 1 overall pick in the NBA draft. One of those dynamic diaper dandies, of course, the University of Kansas, AJ Abanta, has had a year for BYU. My guy, Keaton Wagler, from the ILL, continues to tear it up. And you got some other guys, Kingston Flemings from Houston, that team right now knocking at the door, potentially grabbing a number 1 seed. And the list goes on and on and on. This is an unbelievable freshman class. And I think really a primary reason why, if you have a thirst, you have a lust for the round ball, you're not getting, that satisfaction watching the pros and the tankathons that are going on right now at that level. You're going to the college game, and according to Front Office Sports, as reported last week, ratings are up 69%. Nice. Year over year in the college sports game. Because, again, I think people who have an appetite for squeezing the orange, they're getting it right now in college. So buckle up, folks. We've got some sensational battles at the Power 4, Power 5 level, and who is going to win the regular season titles in each of those leagues. And, of course, we're barreling to what I feel is the mother of all events on the sports calendar every year. Sorry, Super Bowl, and it was kind of a sucky one this year anyway. But I think March Madness is going to live up and deliver on all the hype. So welcome back to College Hoops.
Let's start with a team that was, you talk about hurtling towards the postseason. Arizona was rolling. They lose this week, their first loss of the year, and immediately I pull up a set of power rankings at ESPN.com, and I see them drop behind Michigan. Now, no one's going to argue that Michigan could arguably be the best team in the country, but what kind of dents in the armor did you see from the Wildcats in that loss that give you any reason to worry about them once we get to the postseason?
Yeah, I mean, defensively, it was one of the more lackluster efforts of the entire season, evidenced by the fact that the Kansas Jayhawks netted 1.10 points per possession, so well above the D1 average in that category. And I felt that Arizona got beat by their own game, really. Kansas is a team not known to really rev the engine and speed teams up, but that was a point of emphasis. Melvin Council was awesome in that game. Without Darren Peterson on the floor, so was Flory Badunga. Kansas had the size to match to mitigate and thwart some of those interior actions that Arizona typically feasts on against other teams. So That was a kind of an even Steven bout of sorts based on the personnel that was out there. But the one biggest takeaway that I got was, again, Kansas was like, hey, Arizona, we know you like to run. We typically play in a half-court grind, but we're going to press that pedal, step on the gas, beat you at your own game, and Paducah's going to go off in the interior, be a supreme rim protector. Mount Krivas, I think, was mitigated and frustrated often at times. Koa Pete had a very subpar performance across the board, so they got to taste their own medicine a little bit. Not to say that Arizona all of a sudden is going to take a backseat in the NCAA tournament. I mean, they're very much a number one seed. I still have them as the number 101s. I think the resume overall is slightly better than Michigan's. But of course, as you know, Chris, it all comes down to draw. Who is going to be the path? Who is going to be the road, the Final Four in Indianapolis for this Wildcats club? But man, as we've seen, stretching back at the beginning of the year in non-conference play, they can hang. They can beat anybody in the country when they're even bringing their B-plus game. Unfortunately, it's more of a B-minus, C-plus performance inside Fog Allen.
Up on the screen, if you're watching on YouTube right now on You Better You Bet, as I got Brad Evans in here from BetMGM tonight talking college hoops, you can see the futures for the national championship winner. Right off the edge of that page, Brad, would be the team that beat Arizona that you just got done talking about. And I've seen Kansas win games multiple different ways. You talked about how they were willing to turn up the tempo the other night against the Wildcats. 16-1 at BetMGM. Is Kansas national championship capable?
Yeah, I think they are. They're certainly in that conversation. I have projected right now as the lowest number 2 seed, the latest edition of the bracket big board, which you can check out for free on my site, thegamingjuice.com. I mean, they're still in a number 1 seed conversation. If somehow, some way they can win out, you look at the rest of the season schedule, and they got a tough road to hoe here upcoming. They got to play at Iowa State inside Hilton Coliseum this Saturday, follow against a very hungry and bubblicious team in Oklahoma State. In Stillwater after that, Cincinnati at home, Houston at home. That's going to be a colossal game. At Arizona, rematch, revenge game, certainly on the mind for the Wildcats in that one. At Arizona State, then at home against Kansas State, an intra-state rivalry there in the Sunflower State. This team is really impressed me here, and fighting through various ailments, as I mentioned with Darren Peterson. But again, they have a supreme rim protector in Flory Badunga, a guy can get out and get you a double-double, get you 3 to 4 blocks in a game. They have the strong guard play, and guard play, it sounds cliche, but it is indeed everything in the NCAA tournament in a single elimination format. So Kansas right now playing at really a top 10 level. And if they can carry that top 10 momentum into March, they're going to be a very tough out, whether they're on the 1 line, the 2 line, maybe they slide to the 3 line. That is a team you don't want to draw. They have an ample opportunity to blaze the trail of the Final Four and represent in the Circle City.
Brad Evans of BetMGM tonight is with us here on You Better You Bet, getting you primed for the college hoops stretch run here. If you've been knee-deep in football for the last 6 months, check out thegamingjuice.com as well. You can follow Brad on social media, on X in particular, at Noisy Huevos. Brad, I've never asked the origin of Noisy Huevos.
All right, well, I'll give you the backstory here. So I am a wallflower, clearly. Somebody that's rather sheepish in general. When I was in high school, I had a group of friends live about a block away from me. I would step out of my back door and they could hear me down the street. And I show up one day and we're just playing half-court basketball at their place. And they're like, man, you're nothing but a big noise. We heard you up the block. Man, you're loud. Mo Rocca. And I'm like, yeah, I am. So that was the origin of Big Noise. The nickname has stuck with me ever since. So I was 14, 15 years old. And then I invented this concept of Team Huevos back in my early days at Yahoo Sports. You know what huevos are? It's eggs in Spanish, but it has a different meaning as well.
Sure.
A little bit more salacious meaning, so to speak. So when I got let go by Yahoo in 2019, I was once Yahoo Noise. I don't work here anymore. They let me go. I got to change it. So I'm like, Noisy Huevos. That's got a good ring to it. Let's roll with it. So there's your origin story. Nickname of the Big Noise, Team Huevos, smashing together for all of your social media delights.
Every great superhero needs an origin story, Brad. And that's yours. And I absolutely love it. I want to talk about Gonzaga for a second because they were a team that way back in April last year, right after the tournament ended last year, I had a couple people tell me, if you want to get in on an early futures bet for a team that could make a run next year, given the number, go after Gonzaga. Graham Ike coming back, by all means. Now, they had an ugly loss last week to Portland. And I think people thought that would ding them a lot more in the metrics, the net ratings, some of the other numbers that go into the committee's decision on where to place teams. Maybe that's a good thing for Gonzaga if they sneak up as a 4 seed or whatever it may be. Where do they end up sitting when the brackets get released, and how difficult could their path be?
Yeah, look, I'm really torn with this Gonzaga team. Really what to make of them, what their true upside, overall identity is right now. Still reeling from that loss against the Portland Pilots, which was just downright inexplicable, a below 500 Portland team. Now, they were able to rebound. They absolutely throttled Oregon State in the follow-up, winning that one by 20, and then beat up on Wazoo in the next game, winning by 30. Now, they got a tough couple of games upcoming. Santa Clara on the road, Herb Sendek's bunch, teetering right now on whether they're going to be in or out of the at-large field. On the latest edition of the Bracket Big Board, I have the Broncos, Steve Nash U, as the first team out of the projected NCAA field. And then they're, playing at St. Mary's the last game of the year. We know that St. Mary's grinds you. They live in the half court. Randy Bennett's teams always are high executioners in terms of their offensive game plan and flow. Very stiff and stout defensively as well. I have the Zags projected right now as the highest number 4 seed on the latest bracket big board. Let's say they win out. They get the automatic berth at a WCC. They will probably be a high-end number 3 seed. Now, if they lose a couple of games down the home stretch, it can maybe slide as far as a number 5 seed. Again, they have decent guard play, not extraordinary guard play. Graham Ike is awesome, one of the best pivot men in all of college basketball. And Braden Huff, I should say, is going to be back hopefully here in another week or two. And he's a key cog for this entire team, given his size, beating in the inside-outside game. And we'll see what the draw is, but I'm going to be reluctant to march them on anything beyond the first weekend. They get a tough draw in the NCAA tournament. The Zags could exit stage left in the round of 32.
Ooh, Brad Evans with us here talking college hoops on You Better You Bet. The chat that we have here on the show, I saw our boy Kenny throw up the idea of Iowa State. They're 14-1 on the national championship board right now at BetMGM, and they look dominant at times. They have a great ability to create chaos, and they didn't do that. They created too much of their own chaos against TCU the other night. And again, I think it's a question for me of, are those dents in the armor that we're seeing for teams that we thought weren't flawless necessarily, but were as close as you can get to flawless? Do they start to show up late in the year in conference play? I mean, they've still got Kansas, Houston, BYU all left on the regular season schedule. Yeah. And the Big 12 tournament could be brutal, not even including the LED light up floor. But Iowa State, legit title contender and a team that can get its act together before the Big 12 tournament, make some noise there, and put themselves in a good position going into the NCAA tournament.
They have a seat at the table, but I have my reservations. I have my doubts. Look at the lopsided record they have right now in the Big 12, and it's rough and tumble. It's a mighty conference. I think it's the best conference in the land. 8-3 is an outstanding mark, to say the least, in that category. But they really beat up on the dregs of the keg in that league over the first 11 games. The likes of Baylor, the likes of Oklahoma State, not once but twice. Colorado, Kansas State, Baylor is way down this year. So the 3 L's they do have against stiffer foes, losing at TCU, which is a bit of a surprise. The offense non-existent in that game on Tuesday. They lost on the road against Cincinnati, a team that's playing outstanding defense right now. And then they lost at KU. So losing at Kansas there. Yeah, and you mentioned it, man. The next 3 games, whoo, daddy, is that a rough and tumble road? Kansas, Houston, BYU. Oh, and not to mention, too, they have Texas Tech left, though that one in Ames. And then they got to go on the road in Tucson on March the 2nd to take up a matchup against the Arizona Wildcats. I think a correction is on the immediate horizon. They are a cohesive bunch, not a particularly deep team. Momcilovic really makes his team tick with his arcsmanship, one of the best arc assassins in the game when he has been on, but he's been largely cold here of late. They didn't get it done at the charity stripe, and they haven't really done that all season. Only shooting 67% on their freebies, and that's going to be something that's going to rear its ugly head in a close game in a single elimination format. So I have Iowa State projected right now as a number 2 seed. As a betting man, I could see them sliding to as far down as a number 4 by Selection Sunday. More than likely going to land in the middle there. It is a number 3, but that's another team that could be susceptible to an early round knockout because they're not slamming the door on opponents in some of these tight games. And as the stakes ratchet up, as the competition ratchets up, deeper as you get in the in-state tournament, the tougher it is for Iowa State to conquer that foe.
Before I let you run, Brad, in about a minute if you can, one team we haven't talked about yet that you absolutely love as we enter the final few weeks of the regular season.
Yeah, I'll talk about it. Wisconsin. Look, I'm a diehard Illinois fan, and this Wisconsin team, I have projected right now as a number 8 seed. I think they're going to land on the number 7 line come Selection Sunday. That is a team. If you were a number 2 seed in whatever region you're placed, you do not want to see. As we've seen consistently, number 2 seeds exit stage left by the end of the first weekend. Wisconsin could be that giant killer. They beat Illinois on the road. They beat Michigan on the road. They have 2 dynamite guards in Boyd and Blackwell, and they're playing better defensively, and they really make it rain from outside. 51% of their hoists coming from 3, so don't sleep on Bucky Badger.
I love it. Brad Evans of BetMGM tonight. Check him out at thegamingjuice.com as well. He and Pat Boyle every night from 6 to 11 Eastern right here on Westwood One Sports with BetMGM tonight. Enjoy the hoops, my friend. We'll talk soon.
Adios, amigos. I can't wait till March gets here.
Si, senor. The month of Marzo. Brad Evans. Not lacking in energy whatsoever. He's ready to go. He's waking you up for college hoops and the stretch run. Absolutely love it. About an hour from now, we'll talk to RJ Choppy because we focused a lot on the Raiders in the first hour of the show and what may be coming for them this offseason. I mean, come on. It wouldn't be a national show of some sort if we didn't talk about the Cowboys at some point. So we'll get into that. Plus, they partied in Seattle yesterday. Coming up next here on You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports. F-bombs. Plenty of them. And why I think the outcome of the Olympic men's hockey tournament has already been decided. That's all next here on You Better You Bet.
Yeah, I'll start with Carolina. I can move them up to the highest number 5 seed on the big board. You might say that's it. They're not number 4. They're not number 3 seed. No, they don't have the overall resume yet to get quite there. Number 24, the net. Nothing to scoff at there. And again, that is more of a sorting tool, not a be-all, end-all as an individual measurement. They played a borderline top 50 overall strength of schedule, though number 91 in non-conference strength of schedule. 5-4 on the road. Okay, not terrible. 3-3 in quarter one. Not terrible, but also not great. The biggest issue for Carolina, and, kudos to them, massive win at home. Dean Dillon was rocking, stormed the courts, Trimble's 3 at the buzzer, up and good. First time you had a buzzer beater in that series in like 2 decades. Just tremendous, to watch that must-see TV moment, to say the least. But, they're excellent offensively. They stink right now defensively. And they did clamp down late in that game, but they're number 262 in EFGD over the last 30 days. They have got to tighten up in that capacity, or it could be an early exit in the NCAA tournament, no matter where they land, whether it's on the 5 line or a little bit higher, but still a winner for the weekend. And Florida, too. Florida had arguably the most impressive win on the road against a Texas A&M team. I got projected as the number 7 seed right now. One that was really playing white-hot basketball there in the SEC, a major surprise. Florida goes in and just clobbers them. They win by 20. They've been number 2 team in Bar Torvik in overall effectiveness here last 30 days. They're a team that has the best front court in the country, in Chindilu and Condon and Thomas Hawk. They're getting better guard play now from Boogie Flan. Your boy fired off on a ticket over the weekend for Florida to win the national title at 16-1. That's how I'm impressed with this Florida Gators team. They have a chance to repeat. So Florida right now on the 3 seed line, teetering on the 4 seed line. And I think they're going to wind up come Selection Sunday, maybe as high as a number 2 seed. I think ultimately they're going to be a number 3. And man, you do not want to draw them. If they are on the 3 line and you're a 1 or a 2 in that region, watch out. The Gators could be chopping down once again and reaching the mecca of college basketball in the Final Four this year in Indy.
If you got anything to say about my quarterback, you got anything to say about my defense, you got anything to say about my O-line, and you got anything to say about the city of Seattle, I got 2 words for you. You.
This is You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM on Westwood One Sports.
Ernest Jones yesterday at the Seahawks championship rally following their parade in Seattle. More on that in just a second. Welcome back into You Better You Bet. On Westwood One Sports, Chris Mack in for Nick Kostos today and tomorrow. And I think the Olympic hockey tournament has already been decided. My opinion anyway. We'll talk about it in just a few minutes as well, as Canada gets ready to take on Czechia in about 15 minutes. That gets started. The Americans play Latvia later this afternoon around 3:10 Eastern. Even if you're not a big hockey fan, maybe it's just me, it feels like the hockey games are the best part of the Winter Olympics. Sorry. I don't get into two-man luge. I don't get into ice dancing. I just read a detailed explanation of how ice dancing is scored, and I still don't know what's going on. In general, I have a really hard time with sports that I don't understand how I can tell who's winning. Like curling. Slide a rock toward the circles. I'm pretty sure it's just like shuffleboard, but I don't know how shuffleboard works either, to be totally honest. So, hockey, easy to understand. Puck in net. That's as straightforward as it gets. There's a score on the screen and a clock, and I can tell who's winning, and I know how they're supposed to win. The rest of the Olympic events, not so much. Anyway, we'll get into that in a second, and why I think one team is already attacking this from the right perspective, especially based on what went down last time around. But Ernest Jones just dropping F-bombs in the middle of the Seahawks victory celebration. Like, this is nothing new. This has become regular now that we get guys going up there during the celebration, the championship celebration, and just saying whatever they want to. And most of these things get broadcast on local television, right? Like, I've been to championship parades before for both the Penguins and the Steelers. Yes, that was a long time ago. But I've been to them before. And the speeches, they can get a little off color from time to time. But it's always hilarious to me. I'm not offended by a little profanity, okay? But it's always hilarious to me that all the rules go out the window. Ernest Jones is dropping F-bombs on live local television, and everybody is like, oh, yeah, they're having so much fun. That's great. I love it. It's like, why? I'm fine with it. I'm fine with it. I'm not offended by profanity. But if you're cool with it now, why does it bother you so much at other times? That always astounds me, the double standard that people have towards profanity. Ernest Jones gets up there with a T-shirt on, by the way, and it's a great T-shirt that I saw a lot of the guys wearing yesterday at the Seahawks celebration, with Sam Darnold flipping the bird. And it's hilarious. Like, it's a championship celebration. It's supposed to be fun. If some people drop some F-bombs, everyone's going to be okay. No child has ever heard the F word and then immediately entered a life of crime and delinquency. It's never happened. So people are going to be okay. But it's always funny to me that you'll have people who hear that and go, oh, these guys are just partying and having a great time. Isn't this awesome? Let's throw it back to the parade now. F you! And everybody goes, oh, sorry about the language, folks. It's a party. It's a celebration. And then it happens at another random time, maybe during like a live shot, while somebody's standing outside of a crime scene or a house fire on the local news. And some wacko walks by and yells, Baba Booey, F you. And everybody goes, oh, I'm so sorry for the language that you just had to heard on that live. That's terrible. Look. Again, an F word never ruined a child's life. Everyone will survive. Nobody's going to die because Ernest Jones dropped an F-bomb during the Seahawks celebration yesterday. Just don't be so uptight about it all the time. Have the same fun with it that you had yesterday all the time. Anyway, it always amuses me how that happens at championship celebrations. But good for the Seahawks and the city of Seattle having fun. There's nothing better than being at a championship celebration for one of your favorite teams. A rally, a parade, something like that. It's one of the most fun times you could be a part of. It really is. Like I said, I've been to both Steelers and Penguins championship parades, and my kids were just old enough during the last two Penguins Stanley Cup parades back in 2016 and 2017 that I was able to take them to downtown Pittsburgh for those parades. And it's something that, as a kid, you'll never forget. I remember our 6th grade teacher wheeling one of those giant TVs in on a cart during school one day to watch a Penguins victory rally after the 1992 Stanley Cup, I think it was. And it was at Three Rivers Stadium, and it was raining, and Brian Trottier ran with the cup and slid across the tarp on the field. It was amazing. You never forget those things. So if a couple people swear, it's going to be okay. The kids are still going to be all right. As for championships of the Olympic variety, I can tell you who's going to win the gold. I can tell you. This segment sponsored by Progressive Commercial Insurance, protecting your business vehicles 24/7. See if you can save at progressivecommercial.com. The U.S. and Canadian hockey teams, after the Four Nations face-off, when they were clearly the two better of the four teams, and I think we're seeing that continue so far through the early games of the men's tournament in Milan. You saw Finland lose yesterday, unexpectedly, to Slovakia. You saw Sweden struggle with Italy for a couple of periods, even though they ended up outshooting them by nearly 4-1. The U.S. and Canada are the two best teams. One will win gold and one will win silver, unless something strange happens. And I'm pretty sure I know how this is going to play out. Here's what PK Subban had to say on ESPN a couple weeks ago about the matchup between these two.
Can their forwards get it done? We know Brady Tkachuk and Matthew Tkachuk. We know how they're going to show up. We know Jack Eichel's going to show up the way he is. He's won a Stanley Cup. For me, the question is Austin Matthews. He had a couple chances in overtime late in the game to put this thing to bed. He didn't put it to bed in Four Nations. He's going to have those opportunities. He's the captain. It's going to take a defensive effort by their forward group to get it done.
PK Subban on ESPN a few weeks ago talking about a possible matchup between the Americans and the Canadians if it gets to that point in the gold medal game at the Olympics this year. And I think we will get there. I think they're just both so much more talented than every other team in the tournament that short of something crazy happening, like I said, those will be the two teams in the gold medal game. Now, all that being said, I don't see how the Americans beat the Canadians. I will be rooting for it, okay? I'm as patriotic as the next guy. I want to see America win at everything in the Olympics. And I want to see them finally beat the Canadians. I'm not going to go as far as PK did there in putting it all on one guy, though, in Austin Matthews. Before we get to the strategy of it, though, I do think it's worth mentioning that the only two golds in U.S. men's Olympic hockey history have happened in 1960 and 1980. You know the story of the Miracle on Ice. It's a great new documentary out on Netflix that dives into the story yet again. And one of the guys you see in that documentary who was integral to the 1980 U.S. men's Olympic team winning gold and beating the Soviets to get there was Craig Patrick, who was an assistant of Herb Brooks, who was the head coach there. Craig Patrick ended up going on to become the general manager of the Pittsburgh Penguins eventually, and was key to building some of those Stanley Cup teams that I just told you I went to parades to watch them celebrate their Cup victories, especially in the early 90s. Craig suffered a stroke a few weeks back, maybe more like a month back, and he's been recovering at home. Not to get too dramatic, I think it would be incredible while Craig Patrick is at home recovering if the U.S. men's Olympic team pulled off a gold this year for the first time since 1980. I don't believe in all that stuff being out in the atmosphere in the galaxy about how things are predetermined and meant to be and it's fate. I don't. But I think it would be the perfect time with the guy who helped build the 1980 Olympic team, who helped bring all those players from Michigan and Minnesota and Massachusetts and all over the country together under Herb Brooks. If while he was recovering at home, he got to see the U.S. team win gold for the first time in nearly half a century. And I think the way to do that, unfortunately, was to put more offense into the lineup. And they didn't build the roster to do that. Again, I'm not going to go far as PK Subban did a few minutes ago and place it on Austin Matthews. Now, Matthews has yet to prove that he can lead a team to anything more than postseason disappointment, whether it's in Toronto or with the U.S. team. But it's not all on him. It's on the way they built this roster and the way Mike Sullivan is going to coach it. They needed to bring in more offense. They needed to add Cole Caulfield, Jason Roberts into this roster. And they didn't. And they're probably going to end up playing a very similar style to what they played in the Four Nations, which, hey, it got them a silver. It got them to overtime against Canada in the Four Nations. But if they get to that spot again against Canada with gold on the line, and they're still playing the same old humdrum, boring Mike Sullivan style of hockey, they're not going to beat the Canadians. This Canadian team is stacked. Sidney Crosby is their third-line center. Wrap your head around that. I know he's older, but he's still having, even at this advanced age, one of the best seasons of his career. And he's their third-line center. Yeah. They've also added someone in Tom Wilson to the roster who can skate on Connor McDavid's line, the top line for Canada, and provide that distraction, provide that grit, and serve as that barrier between McDavid and the Tkachuk brothers and anybody else. Maybe Sam Bennett gets a game at some point, brought in late as an injury replacement for Anthony Cirelli. They can serve as a barrier to the Americans' grit guys who want to get in your face, who want to be a nuisance, who want to cause nonsense between the whistles. They can't fight like they did at the Four Nations. It's the Olympics, so you get kicked out if you fight. But they can still try to play that way. And I imagine, again, guys like the Tkachuks, it's in their DNA. That's the way they will play. But Wilson's going to give it back, if not initiate it, as good as the Tkachuks want to give it or initiate it. And serve as that barrier so that the McDavids and the Crosbys of the world don't get dragged into that stuff between the whistles. And that's where the worry needs to be for the Americans. The Canadians made the adjustment to the Four Nations and went out and added that grit, those pests. The best pest in the league, maybe, in Tom Wilson, who can skate, who can score, who can play physical hockey. He can do it all. May not be the best in the world, but he can do a little bit of everything. And the Americans, they didn't adjust. They did very minimal adjustments. And they didn't add the infusion of offense that they needed to add, that if things open up against Canada in a gold medal game, they're going to be able to hang with them offensively. I don't see it happening. So I think if you wanted to, the best bet may be, if you wanted to bet on who's going to win what medal in the men's Olympic hockey tournament, rather than betting Canadians to win gold, which is like minus 105 at BetMGM, or as much as your heart wants to tell you to do it, betting the Americans to win gold, Americans to win silver is almost 3-1. That might be it. That's the way I would go anyway, because I don't know how they push past Canada when it comes down to it in a possible gold medal game. Coming up, if you were a teenager in the late 90s, one of the people you grew up watching was lost far too soon yesterday, but one of his signature roles brings up a debate. I'll explain next here on You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports.
I think Vanderbilt you got to look at first and foremost. A team that is hitting the skids a little bit right now. They have lost 4 of their last 7 games. They lost Oklahoma. They were getting absolutely killed in that game. They made almost an incredible historic comeback as the Sooners nearly choked it in the final 2 minutes of the game. But Oklahoma still escaped with a 1-point win, 92-91 inside Memorial Coliseum. Vandy was a feel-good kind of surprise story. Mark Bennington's done an excellent job there. But they're right now number 14 net, nothing, to scoff at there. 6-3 in quarter 1, 5-2 on the road. But they're only number 33 in Barts over the last 30 days. They're 183 EFG offense, and 213 EFG defense. They're a smaller team. They're struggling through some health issues right now. It's going to be a tough road. They got to go at Auburn coming up tomorrow night. So we'll see what version of the Commodores that we get. And BYU is the other team. They lose to Houston, and they lose convincingly by double figures. Credit to Houston, very tough team to play, but BYU is certainly regressed. They're only number 49 in Torrey the last 30 days, and even worse defensively. I remember, talking about the ills of the Carolina Tar Heels. Well, BYU's 317 in the country in effective field goal percentage defense over the last 8 days. As good as DeBonce is, Richie Saunders is, Kibaka's got to step up his game in the interior. They're getting crushed inside. They're not getting out and challenging shots effectively outside. BYU looking like a 6 seed, and that might be generous come Selection Sunday. They're trending very much in the wrong direction.
Welcome back to You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports.
If you grew up in the 90s, there were certain things that just became a part of the pop culture, it's the word they use for it, lexicon, right? Like, whether you watched wrestling or not in WWF at the time, you knew what the crotch chop meant for DX, right? And if you did it at some point in school, your teacher probably had you for detention for doing it. There were certain things. There was a shared pop culture back in the day, kids, that doesn't really quite exist the same way it does now. Chris Mack in for Nick Kostos on You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM. Make it legendary. We are on Westwood One Sports, with you wherever you may be inside the Westwood One Sports app and live across North America on SiriusXM channel 375. We'll get back into NFL offseason issues at the top of the hour. And I'll use the word icon. I'm comfortable with it because he was everywhere during the late 90s. The star of Dawson's Creek was in, just the classic teen movie of the late 90s. James Vanderbeek passed away way too early yesterday after a long battle with colon cancer. And I don't need to go through the whole PSA about guys over a certain age. Make sure you go get screened. A colonoscopy is not fun, but you'll be asleep for it. And then you'll be checked out. Okay. I got one last year. Again, nobody looks forward to it, but it's an important thing to do. Anyway, this is not to make light either of James Van Der Beek's passing, because it is. It's a guy way too young, lost at this age. But back in the 90s, Varsity Blues, where he played Johnny Moxon, the backup quarterback who becomes the starter when Lance Harbor, played by Paul Walker, who unfortunately has also left us way too early, goes down with injury. That movie is classic late 90s. I'm sorry. It just is. And I think Johnny Moxon is on my Mount Rushmore of movie quarterbacks. You can define this any way you want to, but I define it simply with my favorite characters from my favorite football movies over the years who also happen to be quarterbacks, okay? Like, I guess you could call it an omission to not include Randall Pink Floyd from Dazed and Confused, right? But you never see him play football. So I kept him off my list. My Mount Rushmore of all-time movie quarterbacks. Shane Falco in The Replacements, played by Keanu Reeves. I know others out there have other Keanu suggestions. We'll get to it. 310-840-4910 if you want to jump in. Steamin' Willie Beeman from Any Given Sunday, played by Jamie Foxx. Ronnie Sunshine Bass in Remember the Titans, not to be confused, as Tyler did in the chat, with Lance Bass of NSYNC. And Jonathan Moxon from Varsity Blues. I don't want your life. Playing football at West Canaan High may have been your dream. That's my Mount Rushmore, Bill, of all-time movie quarterbacks. Shane Falco, Jonathan Moxon, Ronnie Sunshine Bass, and Steamin' Willie Beeman.
I think that's a good list. Now, if the rule of law is you have to have seen them play football, my list gets blown up a little bit. And in that case, Mox would be on my Mount Rushmore. But I'm approaching it a little differently. I've got some guys. They all play quarterbacks, and some of them, yes, play on the football field. So my first one is Joe Kane from The Program. I absolutely love that movie. Put the women and children to bed and go looking for dinner is a great catch line. He's awesome in the movie. He's actually a complicated character. It's really good. So Joe Kane on my Mount Rushmore. Paul Blake, which is a football movie that has gotten lost, especially for the younger crew. Necessary Roughness, an early 90s comedy movie. A lot of big star, Jason Bateman, Sinbad, Kathy Ireland. There's like a lot of 90s and 80s stars in that one. Paul Blake, played by Scott Bakula, a 35-year-old quarterback who goes back to play college because he skipped college for family reasons. So those two are on there. Now, the other two guys I have did not play football. Now, this next movie is terrible, but I watch it at least once a year, every April, and that's Draft Day. I'm not going Bo Callahan. I'm going Brian Drew. Brian Drew, who goes into his GM's office and trashes it because he thinks he's getting traded. I like that kind of energy. And this movie, this used to be one of my all-time favorite movies. I've probably watched this movie 50 times. So many catchphrases. Not a sports movie at all. But Damon Wayans playing Jimmy Dix in The Last Boy Scout.
Last Boy Scout, yes.
An incredibly, it's funny, it's great action. If you have not seen The Last Boy Scout, go see The Last Boy Scout. It is a great movie. Halle Berry is in it as well, and she shows off a lot of herself. So
that is a great call, Jimmy Dix. I saw somebody throw that into my mentions last night when I threw this question out on Twitter. That was definitely mentioned. Rifleman from All the Right Moves, which when you grow up in Western PA, as I did, is kind of it's a necessary part of the culture because it's supposed to take place. It actually did get filmed in the area. So those ones definitely mentioned. Kenny, I know you were very excited about mentioning Ronnie Sunshine Bass. Do you have any other diversions from our Mount Rushmore so far?
Yes, I do. So I had Ronnie Bass on it, Paul Crewe from The Longest Yard,
Yeah.
I did have Bo Callahan on my list because I like the idea of like his friends not showing up to the party. I thought that was a great part of the movie. And then the last guy, I don't know his name, but the quarterback from Waterboy.
Yeah, no, I don't think anybody remembers his name.
Yeah, but he was funny in that movie, so
yes,
had to add him
Who
there.
are we missing, Tyler? You just jumped in the chat to say we're missing a legend. Who is it?
I mean, we technically didn't see him play football, but if the coach put him in the fourth quarter, Uncle Rico would have been a legend and would have been probably on this Mount Rushmore if he got into the game, actually. So the ultimate what-if story is Uncle Rico. Never got a chance.
Uncle Rico never got a chance. Man. So, R.I.P. James Vanderbeek, gone way too soon, and we'll always remember, I don't want your life. RJ Choppy, speaking of football in Texas, will join us in about 25 minutes. Coming up next, what do the Raiders do? Max Crosby wants out. This is You Better You Bet.
He fails to recall that Mark Andrews was wide open, had the football in his hands, and dropped the 2-point conversion that would have won the game for the Baltimore Ravens. They lost 41. No, that would have tied the game, I believe. Yes, it wouldn't have even won the game. It would have tied the game if Mark Andrews caught that 2-point conversion against Buffalo. So it wouldn't have even been a guarantee that they would have won. It would have tied the game. With the play from 4th and 4 that the Rams lost on was a tremendous play by Devin Witherspoon guarding Ferguson, the Rams tight end. He was not wide open. He didn't even get his hands on the ball. He was basically playing defense to make sure that it wasn't intercepted. He basically had no chance to catch that football. It wasn't even close. The Rams lost that game because the Seahawks outplayed them, because the Rams defense couldn't stop them. It didn't come down to just that one play. The Rams had other opportunities. It came down to Xavier Smith dropping a punt that resulted in a Seahawks touchdown a play later. It resulted in the Rams not getting it on the other 4th down that they went for. Nothing with Ferguson dropping that football. And it wasn't even like a bad throw from Stafford. It was a hell of a play. Seattle had it perfectly covered. That's what it came down to. There was limited opportunities. And that's why, if you want to make one argument why the Rams lost the game, and I didn't really blame Sean McVay in the moment, but the Rams lose by 4. They were down 31-20. They score a touchdown. You probably should have went for 2. Because if you get the 2-point conversion, that would have made 31-28, and then they wouldn't have had to go for it on fourth down there with the final 4 minutes. They would have kicked the field goal to tie the game, and then we would have saw what would have happened. But I don't know what Paul's talking about. That 6'6" monster. If he caught the ball, he dropped the ball. It wasn't a drop. It wasn't even close to a drop. It was a hell of a play by Seattle. And I don't know, man. I'm lost. Paul scrambled me up. I don't know what he's talking about. Everybody wanted to see Matthew Stafford win the MVP. I think there was as many people that wanted to see Drake May win the MVP. And Stafford would have been in the Super Bowl if the Rams defense got some stops. They gave up 450 yards of offense, 31 points. Anyway, we'll take a short break. Cram it up your cram hole, LaFleur.
Welcome back to You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports.
Nothing over in Milan between Canada and Czechia in the Canadians' opening game of the Olympic men's ice hockey tournament. We'll keep you up to date on that. Obviously, I know a lot of people aren't massive hockey fans, but there's something about the Olympics, and then you add in the NHL players, especially on the better teams like the Canadian and U.S. team, a lot of Swedes, a lot of Finns, a lot of Czechs playing for their given countries as well. I love best on best in anything, but especially in hockey. The Four Nations face-off last year around this time was epic. I think it's one easy way to make sure that guys are really competing in some sort of, if you want to call it, all-star format. Get them to represent their countries. We'll see if that works for USA versus the world at the NBA All-Star Game this weekend. I'm not necessarily counting on it. Chris Mack in for Nick Kostos today here on You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM, live wherever you are, coast to coast on Westwood One Sports, inside the Westwood One Sports app, and all over North America on SiriusXM Channel 375. Don't forget, whether you're watching the action on the field, the court, the ice, you want to remember the most exciting moments long after the final whistle. Betting with boosted odds can get you started on that journey. Activate your Odds Boost token right now on any sports bet. You'll receive a bigger payout if you win inside the BetMGM app. Grab your token, elevate the excitement, download the BetMGM app today, and please gamble responsibly. We'll get back into NFL offseason here because we're going to have RJ Choppy from 105.3 The Fan in Dallas join us in about 20 minutes because it's never boring to talk about the Cowboys. I mean, 2 first-round picks, the possibility of a George Pickens franchise tag and associated crash out that may come with it, a ton of offseason questions, cap issues, plenty to talk about with the Cowboys with RJ Choppy, like I said, in about 20 minutes or so here on You Better You Bet. But Max Crosby wants out of Vegas. He's not necessarily ready and willing to back up everything that we're hearing from behind the scenes, but he wants out. He was on Let's Go with Jim Gray last night and tossed a beautiful little word salad about, well, everything everybody's been talking about, his desires this offseason.
If you have drama, if you have a losing season, they just try to throw gasoline on the fire. I know what I'm about. I really don't care what everybody has to say. I used to a lot as a young guy. I really don't give a damn. People could have their own opinions. I know what's going on. I know my truth. I don't need to sit here and keep rehashing it to people that don't know what's going on.
Well, it's not losing that creates the firestorm necessarily, Max. It's losing your team tanking and asking you to sit down while they tank for the last couple of weeks, and then you deciding to whisper very loudly to anyone that is within earshot that you wouldn't mind ending up in New England with Mike Vrabel, or just, I don't like Alex Guerrero, who's now in charge of what they call the wellness program for the Raiders. That's you pouring the gasoline on the fire, Max. And look, I got no problem with you wanting out. You want out. Hey, make it known. Say it with your chest, big man. Get out there, and when Jim Gray has you on, you tell Jim Gray, listen, Jim, I don't like the way things were handled down the stretch in Vegas. I'm not trying to be a problem or an issue or a malcontent, but I don't feel like my career aligns anymore with the goals of the Las Vegas Raiders. So I'd prefer to be somewhere else. Just stand by it. Now, aside from Crosby wanting out, you've also got the question of a roster just bereft of talent in Vegas, right? It's Brock Bowers, maybe Ashton Genty. We'll see. Hopefully this year, if there's more in there. And then you've got the first overall pick in the draft. And everybody just assumes that it's written in ink, nearly chiseled in stone, that Fernando Mendoza is the first overall pick. And look, can the Raiders do that and get away with not having anybody criticize them for it? Yeah, probably. Nope, nobody's ever going to hammer you for having the first overall pick in a draft, being in a position where you need a quarterback and taking the best quarterback available. Like it or not, that's just the way it is. But I think there's a different way to go about this if you're smart, if you're the Raiders. And it's build the rest of the roster before you find the quarterback. So few teams do this these days. They want to pluck a quarterback off the quarterback tree and think that that's going to solve all the problems. And they throw him at the wall and see if he sticks. And if he sticks, great, we got our quarterback. Well, yeah, your offensive line sucks. And he just got sacked 65 times. And you don't have any weapons for him to distribute the ball to. And, your defense isn't all that great, by the way, either. Build out the roster first. You have got two enormous pieces of capital if you're John Spytek and the Las Vegas Raiders. If you're Mark Davis, who knows as much about football and developing an organization and a roster as you know about haircuts, lean in on the rebuild. Please. On behalf of Raiders fans, I'm begging you, and I'm not one, and I've never been a Raiders fan. I was raised a Steelers fan, and I had uncles that would curse at the television every time a Raider walked across the screen. But on behalf of Raiders fans, do this the right way. Please. The right way is to trade Max Crosby. And who knows what kind of haul you can get for him right now. He's not 29 yet. He's still at the peak of his powers. You get him in a defense with other talent around him, and he's going to be even more impactful. Trade Max Crosby. Get whatever you can get for him, and I got to think it's going to be a boatload. And then hold out as long as you can. And on April 22nd or 23rd, heck, you wait right up until the clock starts on that first pick. And it starts counting down from the 10 minutes. You trade the first overall pick. And you get another boatload of picks. And you've now got everything necessary to build out a roster. You build out the roster and then go find your quarterback. Not pluck the quarterback off the quarterback tree and drop him into boiling water. That's not going to work. That is a disservice to any quarterback put in that situation. And it's happened to a lot over the years. Let alone to a quarterback you're using the first overall pick on. Trade back out of the spot. Let somebody else gamble on Fernando Mendoza being anything more than an average starter at the NFL level. That's what I would do if I were the Raiders. All in on building out the rest of the roster. I find my quarterback down the line. Maybe it's Dante Moore next year. Maybe it's Arch Manning next year. Maybe it's somebody the year after that. I don't know. But I'm not spending a first overall pick on Fernando Mendoza and then putting him behind that offensive line with that lack of talent around him on offense and with that terrible defense on the other side of the ball. I'd love to see, as a side note, what would poor Fernando Mendoza do if all of a sudden the Jets traded up into the first overall pick? Oh, Bill, that may be the most interesting part. If the Raiders were to actually trade the first overall pick and the Jets did what was necessary to move up to number 1 to get their quarterback, and Mendoza, I don't know, decided to go to the Canadian League for a year or some other ridiculous notion to stay out of New York. That's what I'm here for, I think.
Yeah, like, look, you cannot convince me that Dante Moore did not return to Oregon just to avoid the Jets. That's
absolutely
100% what he did. He's seeing, Sam Darnold, I know it was before this, but he sees Sam Darnold going 14-3 in back-to-back years after he was left for dead because he played the Jets. Is Zach Wilson next? Like, Geno Smith becomes a competent quarterback for years after he leaves the Jets. Like, the Jets organization, to me, is the biggest dumpster fire in a league where there's a lot of dumpster fire ownership situations. But I think the Jets are consistently the worst. They've got, grandsons playing Madden and making trades and real life. Like, right? I don't even know what's going on over there. So if Fernando Mendoza, now he'll say all the right things. He might, I think this is a little bit like with the Caleb Williams Bears stuff where they weren't sure if they wanted to go to Chicago because that's where quarterbacks go to die. And his rookie season was a disaster. So when guys like Mendoza and Moore see these traditionally bad organizations taking quarterbacks and seeing them get ruined, you have to hesitate. And now with the NIL, you can actually go back and make 10, 11, 12 million and decide if it's worth punting that big contract 1 extra year to stay in school. So to me, yeah, if the Jets trade up to 1, I'd be really curious because, Nick on this show always talks about, Mendoza is the perfect quarterback. He's the AI quarterback. He says every right thing. He's not on social media except for LinkedIn, all these things. But suddenly if the Jets, sorry, Mike Brown, our video producer, who's a big Jets fan, if the Jets are sitting there with the number 1 pick, you have, I don't know if you do a John Elway. I don't know if you do an Eli Manning, but you've got to consider it.
Yeah, you do anything you can to get as far away from the Jets as possible. And I think, I don't know, I think if I'm the Raiders, I'm open to all offers. And I try to keep it as quiet as possible in order to play that leverage right up until the eve of the draft. We all know that won't happen. It'll take one person talking to one other person, and before you know it, Diana Rossini has a story. But, that's what I do. I play this thing out as long as possible, knowing that there are a good 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 teams in the next 10 to 12 picks that may be looking for a quarterback and think, man, if we could jump on Mendoza rather than having to wait another year or roll the dice on a Ty Simpson or a Carson Beck in the middle rounds, I do that. I think they're, and it's not a knock against Mendoza, but I think it's pretty clear to a lot of folks that this is not a guy that would be 1-1 in a lot of drafts. He's coming off of a phenomenal year. I can't take that away from him. He does, like you said, Nick's mentioned it before. He's the AI quarterback. Yes, thank you very much. I will throw the out route. And, he knows exactly what to do and processes it all very, very well. But I don't think he's a guy that you drop into a situation where everything else is a mess and he's the key that unlocks it and fixes it all.
I completely agree with that. I would not do that. Like, look, I think if Cam Ward was in the 2024 draft, I think
Right.
he would have been the 4th or 5th quarterback taken there. I don't think he was in that same group. He goes number 1 because he's the best quarterback. Now, he looked really good the last 6 weeks. I think they might have something with Cam, but the Titans were a disaster. His coach gets fired a few games into the season. They put him in a dumpster fire. And you see a lot of these number 1 quarterbacks that were Trevor Lawrence, his coach got fired during his rookie season. Caleb Williams' coach got fired during his rookie season. Same with Cam Ward. They are just trying to destroy these quarterbacks. Like Trevor Lawrence, it's taken years. And finally, he looks like the talent, the last 6 weeks or so that he was, expected to be. But Trevor Lawrence, is he good? Is he not good? We've been debating this for years because it takes a lot to undo the damage that you can do to a young quarterback the first couple of years. So I'm with you. If they take Mendoza, they have to invest everything else this offseason in fixing that offensive line.
Yeah, and I don't. Here's the thing: even if they made the right deal for Max Crosby and got back a boatload of high value picks, I still don't know if I trust them to do it right, to put it back together right, because it's the Raiders and they just haven't been able to figure it out for so long. I don't know if Tom Brady and Alex Guerrero walking in there and feeding everybody avocado ice cream is going to fix it either. Coming up with 2 first-round picks, cap issues to sort out, and the issue of what to do with George Pickens and the franchise tag. The Cowboys have a ton of offseason questions. RJ Choppy of 105.3 The Fan in Dallas will try to give us some answers to them next here on You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports.
He fails to recall that Mark Andrews was wide open, had the football in his hands, and dropped the 2-point conversion that would have won the game for the Baltimore Ravens. They lost 41. No, that would have tied the game, I believe. Yes, it wouldn't have even won the game. It would have tied the game if Mark Andrews caught that 2-point conversion against Buffalo. So it wouldn't have even been a guarantee that they would have won. It would have tied the game. With the play from 4th and 4 that the Rams lost on was a tremendous play by Devin Witherspoon guarding Ferguson, the Rams tight end. He was not wide open. He didn't even get his hands on the ball. He was basically playing defense to make sure that it wasn't intercepted. He basically had no chance to catch that football. It wasn't even close. The Rams lost that game because the Seahawks outplayed them, because the Rams defense couldn't stop them. it didn't come down to just that one play. The Rams had other opportunities. It came down to Xavier Smith dropping a punt that resulted in a Seahawks touchdown a play later. It resulted in the Rams not getting it on the other fourth down that they went for. Nothing with Ferguson dropping that football. And it wasn't even like a bad throw from Stafford. It was a hell of a play. Seattle had it perfectly covered. That's what it came down to. There was limited opportunities. And that's why, if you want to make one argument why the Rams lost the game, and I didn't really blame Sean McVay in the moment, but the Rams lose by 4. They were down 31-20. They score a touchdown. You probably should have went for 2. Because if you get the 2-point conversion, that would have made 31-28, and then they wouldn't have had to go for it on fourth down there with the final 4 minutes. They would have kicked the field goal to tie the game, and then we would have saw what would have happened. But I don't know what Paul's talking about. That 6'6" monster. If he caught the ball, he dropped the ball. It wasn't a drop. It wasn't even close to a drop. It was a hell of a play by Seattle. And I don't know, man. I'm lost. Paul scrambled me up. I don't know what he's talking about. Everybody wanted to see Matthew Stafford win the MVP. I think there was as many people that wanted to see Drake May win the MVP. And Stafford would have been in the Super Bowl if the Rams defense got some stops. They gave up 450 yards of offense, 31 points. Anyway, we'll take a short break. Cram it up your cram hole, LaFleur.
Some time, loading up, going deep, Pickens. He's got it! Oh, come on!
This is You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM on Westwood One Sports.
Kevin Burkhardt with the call on Fox. George Pickens doing George Pickens things for the Cowboys this past season. It is You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM on Westwood One Sports. Chris Mack in for Nick Kostos today and tomorrow. You want to be a part of the conversation, you can always do it by dialing us up at 310-840-4910, or there's the chat inside the YouTube feed as well. Go to youtube.com/@thekostos to watch the show as well. The NFL offseason is officially underway. It had been for the last several weeks for most of the 32 teams. Teams 31 and 32 joined the fray officially as of about 48 hours ago or so, as they got back from Santa Clara and Super Bowl 60. And now everybody looks ahead to the Combine in a couple weeks, free agency a couple of weeks after that, and then the draft. You can never get bored talking about certain teams, right? Like certain teams are just always dramatic, right? They've always got their own internal and a lot of times external soap opera going on. You can never get tired of talking about the Dallas Cowboys. So we bring in my good friend from Sean and RJ on 105.3 The Fan in Dallas. RJ Choppy. Chop, how you doing?
Doing great. Couldn't be more happy to talk about a team that doesn't win.
A team that doesn't win, but a team that, maybe they think like they got some pieces in place on offense, maybe, at least a lot of free agents up in the air. We could talk about those, but I want to start with the biggest question of the offseason in Dallas, which is clearly the guy we just played the highlight of, George Pickens. Are they, in fact, going to tag him? And if they decide to tag him, does it keep open the possibilities that they may still extend him? They may look for a tag and trade kind of move? I mean, how wide is the world of possibilities around what the Cowboys could do with George Pickens this offseason?
It is very wide because, he is a David Mulugheta client. He's an athlete's first. That's who represents him. that's not a guy who is going to play on a franchise tag, I don't believe. The Cowboys obviously are going to tag him because they want to protect themselves. They would like to work out a long-term contract, but what is he going to ask for? I think the Cowboys are thinking somewhere in the 28-ish a year range, 30, 35, whatever. I think George and David Mulugheta are going to ask for more than $35 million a year. And I don't know what the Cowboys are going to go down that road or not. So I think everything is on the table. The tag is on the table, but I think it's off the table for George. The signing and the extension long term is on the table for both of them. I think they're going to be a little bit far apart in the money. And then the trade option, which comes in, and that certainly is something that is going to be looked at.
How far do you think Pickens is willing to go in? I mean, is he willing to go the Le'Veon Bell route and sit out a season if it comes to that, if he gets tagged? I mean, that seems like the kind of reaction, knowing him from his time in Pittsburgh, that seems like the kind of reaction George would have. Oh, you're going to tag me? No, you're not. I'm not going to play.
Yeah, that seems extreme, but it also seems right up his alley. And that I truly think that's that's the smallest of the options. If the sign long term, the trade, those are going to be, 1 and 2. And then third is him playing on the tags. I don't think he's going to. Fourth is him sit out a year. I don't know, man. Like, I have a hard time. I never would have bet that Le'Veon would have done it, but he did. And I don't think George Pickens will do it either.
So if Pickens gets sorted one way or another, I imagine it probably ends up with a lot of back and forth. We know how Jerry likes to handle this. A lot of back and forth in the media, but eventually it probably gets handled. I don't think this goes the Micah Parsons route. What is the feeling about what the Cowboys can do offensively next year if, in fact, they've got Lamb and Pickens again? Feels like maybe they found some other things. They found some run game on offense. Dak continued to had a great year, I think, outside of wins and losses. Statistically, a great year for him. Do they feel good about that side of the ball if they can nail down the Pickens issue, which they may spend the better part of their spring and summer trying to nail down?
I mean, last year they were a top 5 offense. They feel great about it. Dak has shown that, and listen, he's not without faults. He has his faults. Most quarterbacks do that aren't named Mahomes. And even he has some, right? Even Allen has some. But, Dak is in that group of quarterbacks that is, always a little bit maligned, always a little bit underrated in that, Jared Goff kind of category where they're just underrated players. They put up good numbers. And they go to the playoffs more often than not. They feel great about the offense. The offense is not a problem. The offense hasn't been a problem for a long time. The defense is the problem with this team. Now, the other side of that is, last year, Dak was healthy the entire year. That hasn't happened in quite a while, and they missed an opportunity. They didn't take advantage of a healthy season, and they didn't take advantage of an offense that I don't know who would have wanted to go up against that in the playoffs. That's a really good offense, and they didn't take advantage of it.
So where does the build start then on the defensive side of the ball? Because you've got free agents there to worry about as well. Like Clowney in particular is a free agent. But you've got the advantage of 2 first-round picks, 12 and 20, I think it is, if I'm not mistaken. So they've got the chance to maybe use that capital to move up into the top 7 or 8, maybe. They've got the ability, if they don't like what they have at 12, to move back for maybe another pick in the 20s and accumulate some second-day picks. What's the thought on where they go in the draft in April?
All right, so most of the commentary has kind of settled around defense. Caleb Downs, Sonny Styles, Jermon McCoy, Monsieur Delane, Keldrick Falk, Mesidor. It's been mostly around the defensive side. Now, one of the, they'll all be there at 12. Yeah, obviously Caleb Downs might not be there at 12, but people think Styles will be. The question is going to be at 20. What do they do? Look, I think if you were to poll Cowboy fans, they would say they want to pick with one of those and trade back with another. They're not trading up, and I'll tell you why. They don't have a second-round pick this year, and they don't have a third-round pick this year, but they have 2 ones. So if you want to, do you want to take 2 top 20 players or 4 in the top 90? And I think that's how the Cowboys are looking at it. They would, if they had their druthers, they might trade back both picks because they need the bodies. They need the bodies.
What's the thought on, regardless of who the personnel is that's involved on the defensive side of the ball, the new defensive coordinator, Christian Parker, youngest defensive coordinator in franchise history, and you talked about all the issues they've had on that side of the ball. Is there a level of belief that this fresh face can walk in and all of a sudden fix the ills for the Dallas defense?
That's the hope. We don't know. We don't know anything about him. We know that he is really well respected around the league, and everybody seems to like his brain. But we don't know anything about him from a coaching standpoint. He comes to the Vic Fangio tree, which is it's a great one to come from. Vic has given the Cowboys fits, and maybe he helps Dak Prescott figure out how to beat that defense because that defense has been a very, very difficult one for Dak to crack. That said, there's a big unknown with hiring somebody who's never coached the position before. Never coached the overall defense and been a play caller. So he's never called plays. He's never been the coordinator. So that's asking a lot for a team that believes to be a win-now team. They do think they're win now.
At what level of win now, though? Like they think, hey, we could get back to the playoffs next year, or they're like, no, we're all in. We can make a Super Bowl run for the first time in 30 years.
Jerry loves the talent on this team. He loves it. Of course, he likes it. He picked it. They don't blame the players here. You ever notice this? It's never the quarterback. It's never the player's fault. They have cycled through OCs and DCs and head coaches. It's not the players. And the reason it's not the players' fault is because Jerry picks the players, or at least he wants the impression that he picks the players. So, that they believe they can do some damage. Win a Super Bowl, I don't know, but they believe they can do some damage.
How do they handle all of they've got a massive cap overage, I think, going into this year too, don't they? Like $67 million or something. How do they handle that? Can they restructure Dak? Can they what can they do in order to give themselves some kind of wiggle room to maybe make a move or two in free agency?
They have the most restructurable money in the NFL. So they can I saw the stat today. They can restructure. Man, it's almost like $200 million worth of stuff. They can free up a ton of cash, a ton. So yeah, they're in a good place now. When you restructure, you're just kicking the can. I'm a big proponent of. Now, there's 2 schools of thought. One is there's no such thing as a salary cap; it doesn't really exist because it goes up. So there's no such thing as cap hell. Or the other side is, hey, try to rebuild. Reset your cap and then go. And they don't opt to do that because Jerry doesn't believe in that. He says, he has told us, and we have him on every Tuesday during the season. He has said, I ain't got time for a bad time. He's too old. He said it's not on his schedule. So yeah, they're not going to rebuild.
RJ Choppy of Sean and RJ at 105.3 The Fan in Dallas is with us here on Westwood One Sports. Chris Mack in for Nick Kostos on You Better You Bet today. There are so many owners now, and everybody knows I'm based in Pittsburgh. I've heard the same thing from Art Rooney II this offseason. I don't understand why you do not want to win in a given season, right? These owners, especially guys of legendary franchises, right, who feel like their legacy may be hanging in the balance. They want to get back to a Super Bowl. They want to win one more Lombardi before their reign ends. But I don't know if it hasn't led, and I don't know if this is the case in Dallas necessarily, but I think in places like Pittsburgh and other places around the league, it leads to this quarterback thirsty environment, right? Where it's all about, I got to get the quarterback. Rest of the roster be damned. And we've talked a lot about the Raiders this morning here on the show. And I'm curious what your perspective is on the Raiders. Max Crosby wants out. I say, to hell with it. If Crosby wants out and I'm going to trade him and accumulate a bunch of picks, let's trade out of the first overall spot, too, because I'm not sold on Fernando Mendoza as a franchise-altering quarterback, especially with the lack of talent around him. It's basically Bowers and Genty, and that's it. It is kind of a double-barreled question, so I'll let you answer it generally about the league in totality. Do you think teams are going about building their rosters the right way? And then drill it down to the specific of, would it make sense for the Raiders to entertain that proposition of trading out of the one spot?
So I think teams generally go about building their team the right way. I just think they don't want to admit how they're doing it. Go look at the playoffs this year. Every single team except for Philly and San Fran had a first-round quarterback. Now, Darnold wasn't picked by Seattle, but he was still, the third overall pick, right? Mm-hmm. Go back to last year. Every single team except Philadelphia had a first-round quarterback. Lamar was the last pick of the first round, right? Now, when you get to Dak and Brock Purdy, obviously Brady, those are your outliers. But for the most part, I mean, every team gets a quarterback. I mean, and I don't mean first round. I mean, they're high first-round picks. That's just who wins Super Bowls, is high first-round picks, unless your name's Tom. I think teams generally go about it. I think the Raiders, I mean, look, they don't have a quarterback. And if you don't have a quarterback, your only job as a GM to me is to find one. So, I'm taking Fernando. If Fernando doesn't hit, I'll get rid of him and I'll find somebody next year. I think GMs are too afraid of jobs. They're trying to save their job instead of trying to build their roster. I could go on all day about this, man. I could go on all day about this.
I wish I had our old buddy John Martin from the old BetMGM U days with us here. He's an avowed Raiders fan, to get a Raiders fan perspective on this, because I just think it sets Mendoza and the franchise up for failure the way we've seen so many other organizations do it. Like, I understand what you're saying. Hey, get your quarterback, because without a quarterback, you got nothing. But I also think it's possible to take your quarterback and drop him into a situation where they're not going to be able to do anything with it anyway. Because especially in Mendoza's case, we're not talking about a quarterback who's going to elevate the entire roster. He's good. I think he could be very good in glimpses, but he's not a Joe Burrow. He's maybe a poor man's Joe Burrow. At best, that's the ceiling. So dropping him into that situation in Vegas where it's a disaster roster-wise, I think it just does a disservice to Mendoza and the build-out of the roster in general.
Well, it might. It might. And then you find out that he's not the guy, right? And then you move on. Like, to me, like the number one pick generally always goes to a really bad franchise. Joe Burrow. I mean, if you're elite, you'll be fine. Burrow's fine. Peyton Manning was fine. He went to a bad team. Matt Stafford went to a really awful team. And he played well. He didn't win, but he got to the playoffs a couple of times. If you're great, and if you're an elite quarterback, I don't care where you go, you're going to be all right. The problem is he not elite, or is he elite?
Yeah, and we see so many quarterbacks get pushed all the way up the draft board now just because they happen to be one of the better ones in their class and not actually one of the best quarterbacks. Chop, I'm going to let you run, brother. I appreciate the time so much this morning. Check out RJ Choppy on Twitter at RJ Choppy, and every morning on 105.3 The Fan in Dallas is a part of Sean and RJ. Hey, pitchers and catchers reporting, the Olympics. That hat you got on right there, brother, that says sports across the front, you got all of them right now. NBA All-Star Weekend, which I don't think anybody's going to watch. But, yeah, it's all laid out in front of you.
Winter Olympics are my jam, too. I went over to my mom's house just to watch figure skating. I'm like, I'll watch it with you. This is what we did when I was a kid. I was 8 years old. You're getting me hooked on Scott Hamilton and Peggy Fleming.
There's no person in the world that's more excited about watching ice dancing than anybody's mom. I don't care who we're talking about. Moms love ice dancing.
It was graceful. It was so majestic. It was a wonderful final performance by the French duo, knocking out the Americans at the very end. I don't know if you watched it. It was tremendous.
I didn't. I can't do ice. Two things I can't do are ice dancing and two-man luge. I'm sorry. I'm out. I just did it.
I'm with you on the two-man luge. I'm with you on that one.
Thanks again, Chop. Take care of yourself. We'll talk soon.
Yes, sir.
RJ Choppy of Sean and RJ on 105.3 The Fan in Dallas. Great stuff with him. Talking about the Cowboys offseason and just the general idea of how NFL teams are building out their rosters in general, especially in an offseason where you are completely devoid of quarterback talent for the most part, whether it's free agency or the draft. Coming up, we laughed, we cried, we learned some things. The 3 stars of the day next here on You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports. I'm going to do it for 2 quarterbacks right now that we know did not have a ton of success with the team they were drafted by. And for me, I would say Baker Mayfield is probably number 1 that stands out. I don't think he seems as unlikely as Darnold, but it would still be a surprise if Baker Mayfield wins the Super Bowl next year. Guy that had, again, went to the playoffs with the Browns, but largely negative when you look at his tenure there with the team that drafted him. And then he went to Carolina. Then he goes to Tampa Bay, and he's been killing it. But, you know, again, to get to a Super Bowl is a whole other conversation. I think Baker's the most likely candidate to do that, somebody that we already see in that arc right now. Somebody else that we're kind of closing, we're nearing that next stage. And I don't know if I really believe in him, but the talent is there, is Kyler Murray, who went to the playoffs with Arizona, looked like an MVP candidate the year that they started out 7-0, and he was balling. And now he's kind of at rock bottom right now for his career. I don't even know what team he's going to end up on next season. I don't think Arizona's keeping him. I don't think there's any chance they're keeping him. And so I got to see what team Kyler Murray ends up on. But we know as much of his shortcomings there are, not a big arm, short. He's got the speed. He's got the talent. We've seen it before. I don't know, man, 5 years from now, Kyler Murray at age like 31, 32 with a great team, great system. I could see it. If we could see Sam Darnold, like we said, I could see it. But for me, it would most likely be Baker Mayfield.
Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports.
Always helps when you turn your microphone on. Hey, Chris Mack in for Nick Kostos here on You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports, also in the Westwood One Sports app, and live across North America on Sirius XM Channel 375. We'll have our 3 stars of the day in just a moment. Whether you're watching the action on the field, the court, or the ice, you want to remember the most exciting moments long after the final whistle. Betting with boosted odds inside the BetMGM app can get you started on that journey. Activate your odds boost token on any sports bet, and you'll receive a bigger payout if you win. Grab your token and elevate your excitement with BetMGM. Download the BetMGM app today and make it legendary. I don't know how the chat went this direction earlier, but it did go in an odd direction where it became a discussion about everybody's height for some reason. And I think it was because RJ Choppy was just on with us from Dallas, and he was out at Radio Row in the Bay Area this past week and mentioned that he saw some old friends that we had worked with before in the past, but had never actually met in person. And it just turned into a dissertation in the chat of everyone rolling out how tall they are. And I think for the most part, I've gathered that we are on this show, when I fill in for Nick here on You Better You Bet, we are at we're at the extremes. Like, what is average height for an American male these days? Like 5'10", I'd guess. Is that sounds about right, I guess. So I lie to people. Like when I first met my wife, when we first started dating, I told her I was almost 5'11", which wasn't true. And I put 5'10" on my driver's license, knowing full well I'm like 5'9" on a good day. And I get the feeling that like Tyler and I may be on one end of this spectrum, and then on the other end, you've got like Kenny and Bill who are on the taller end of the spectrum. And I don't know how this all came up. Kenny's 6'3.5". He just says 6'4". He's like, yeah, okay. Mike Brown, our video producer, like 6'3", 6'4" also. We're all extremes. I don't know how does that happen? And then there's Nick. Nick's also on one end of the extreme. He's not a tall man. Why is it only one or the other? I don't get it. Why isn't it just a show filled with 5'10" guys? I don't know. Stupid thing that I noticed happening in the chat earlier. Anyway, we will get to the 3 stars of the day in just a moment. Some thoughts on what would change the All-Star game. An insane idea that will never actually happen from Nick Wright. Some thoughts on George Pickens as a possible franchise tag target for the Dallas Cowboys. Some thoughts on college hoops, because we had Brad Evans of BetMGM tonight on earlier as well to talk about all of us who are jumping on the college basketball bandwagon now that 6 months of nothing but football are over with the Super Bowl in the rearview mirror. I did want to mention Canada is up 1-0, I believe it is, on Czechia in the Olympics. Middle of the second period, I think it was. Towards the end of the second period now, last I checked. So I'm still convinced the gold medal is Canada's to lose. Not that I won't be rooting for the U.S. team. I will. I want to see the U.S. team win. But I think, given the fact that they did not make the kind of adjustments to the roster that I thought were necessary between last year's Four Nations face-off and this year's Olympic Games, that I would lean towards the Americans. Again, those are clearly the 2 best teams, but I would lean towards the Americans winning silver again. I'd love to see this be the year that they win gold for the first time since 1980. But plus 275, I believe it is, at BetMGM, if you want to bet Team USA to win silver. Because Canada to win the gold, it's not a ton of value there. And you don't want to bet against your country. I want to bet on my country. Not necessarily betting on them to win gold, silver, but still, I want to bet on them to get to a certain point. That's one of the bets that came to me today as we were talking things out here on You Better You Bet. But as I do at the end of every show, the 3 best moments of the show to wrap things up. Let's get to our 3 stars of the day.
3.
So Kansas right now playing at really a top 10 level. And if they can carry that top 10 momentum into March, they're going to be a very tough out. You don't want to draw. They have an ample opportunity to blaze the trail of the Final Four and represent in the Circle City.
Brad Evans of BetMGM tonight joined us earlier to talk college hoops, as I mentioned. And Kansas is one, as he said, and I tend to agree, to keep an eye on. They've won games a ton of different ways. They did it with tempo against Arizona a couple nights ago. And if you can get through the Big 12 in one piece, we'll see if that remains to be seen. If you can get through the Big 12 in one piece, you're battle tested. You're ready for the NCAA tournament. So the Jayhawks are definitely one I am keeping an eye on. I was glad to hear Brad mention the same thing earlier this morning. Our number 2 star today.
2.
PC headlines be damned.
I know where you're going.
White guys versus black guys. Luka, Joker, Flag, Reeves, Knipple against Wimby, whomever. And I'm telling you right now, guys would play hard.
Nick Wright on the Ringer podcast with Bill Simmons earlier this week. They were kicking around ideas for saving the NBA All-Star Game, which will be USA against World this year. But it's mini games, and it's 2 U.S. teams. And I appreciate the effort, I guess, because I'd like to see All-Star games get fixed. I've just resigned myself to the fact that they can't be fixed. That is an insane idea, by the way. That would never work in today's day and age. It just wouldn't. People could not handle it. Too many disgusting, ugly people would say disgusting, ugly things. And I don't know if the white guys could win either. Sorry. Our number 1 star of the day.
1.
They would like to work out a long-term contract. I think the Cowboys are thinking somewhere in the 28-ish a year range, 30, 35, whatever. I think George and David Mulugeta are going to ask for more. And I don't know what the Cowboys are going to go down that road or not. So I think everything is on the table.
Everything's on the table in Dallas for the Cowboys and George Pickens. How are they going to handle it? Look, for the benefit of the Cowboys fans within the sound of my voice, I'd love to lie to you and tell you that this is going to work out and that George Pickens is going to come into camp happy and he's going to be a swell guy all year long and he's going to have a huge season again, and it'll also coincide with the Cowboys actually being good, going back to the playoffs, maybe doing more. I don't see it happening. I see this thing getting dragged out because we all know how Jerry likes to handle things in the media. We all know that he and David Mulugeta aren't exactly the best of friends. And George Pickens will stand firm on what he wants. And I think it's going to get ugly before it gets done, if it ever gets done. So thanks to Choppy for joining the show today as well to talk Cowboys. Tomorrow, I want to dive back into the Raiders just a little bit. Also, there will be Olympic hockey games to react to. Hopefully, no upsets in order, especially as far as the Americans go. Maybe we'll dive into some spring training talk, too, plus more college basketball. The NBA All-Star Weekend is upon us. Plenty more tomorrow. Thanks to each and every one of you and everybody behind the scenes for making it happen and working through some technical issues off the top of the show. I'm Chris Mack. This has been You Better You Bet here on Westwood One Sports.
I'm going to do it for two quarterbacks right now that we know did not have a ton of success with the team they were drafted by. And for me, I would say Baker Mayfield is probably number one that stands out. I don't think he seems as unlikely as Darnold, but it would still be a surprise if Baker Mayfield wins the Super Bowl next year. Guy that had, again, went to the playoffs with the Browns, but largely negative when you look at his tenure there with the team that drafted him. And then he went to Carolina. Then he goes to Tampa Bay, and he's been killing it. But, again, to get to a Super Bowl is a whole other conversation. I think Baker's the most likely candidate to do that, somebody that we already see in that arc right now. Somebody else that we're kind of closing, we're nearing that next stage. And I don't know if I really believe in him, but the talent is there, is Kyler Murray, who went to the playoffs with Arizona, looked like an MVP candidate the year that they started out 7-0, and he was balling. And now he's kind of at rock bottom right now for his career. I don't even know what team he's going to end up on next season. I don't think Arizona's keeping him. I don't think there's any chance they're keeping him. And so I got to see what team Kyler Murray ends up on. But we know as much of his shortcomings there are, not a big arm, short. He's got the speed. He's got the talent. We've seen it before. I don't know, man, 5 years from now, Kyler Murray at age like 31, 32 with a great team, great system. I could see it. If we could see Sam Darnold, like we said, I could see it. But for me, it would most likely be Baker Mayfield.